Finding Berrien County, Georgia is more than locating it on a map. If that's all there was to it, Atlanta might even know where Berrien County's at. But to find Berrien, you have to visit Berrien. And perhaps even more than that, you have to live Berrien. I began my search in 1970 at the age of 24 while I was living in Boise, Idaho. My neighbor, Frida March, was a genealogist at the Idaho State Genealogical Library in Boise. I expressed my desire to know more about my Georgia kin. She took me over to the shelves in Georgia section, where she showed me 8 volumes of this little blue book. And in those pages, I began to find Berrien. Well, Irwin, then Lowndes, then Berrien. But they were just places on a map, though the map was changing. Then Mrs. March showed me how to mount a spool of microfilm as she loaded the 1850, then the 1860, and then the 1870 U.S. Census. I was finding more in one afternoon about my family and where they were living than I had heard from my parents in the past 24 years. But the names I was finding were living in South Carolina, then Georgia, Liberty County, Lowndes County, Berrien County, and then Lois, Ray's Mill, Connell's Mill, Milltown, Alapaha, Adel, Nashville, Kings Chapel, and Cat Creek. I found all of these places on a map. Then I wanted to be in those places, to drive the roads and walk the cemeteries and talk to those names, or their kin anyway. More than 20 years later, in 1992, at the age of 46, I loaded up my Chevy Astrovan along with my 14-year-old son, Lucas, and we made a 3,000-mile journey back to all those places I was from. We spent 2 weeks in Berrien, Lowndes, Atkinson, Lanier, Cook, and Irwin, then over to Liberty and Long, visiting names that were on those rolls of microfilm: Shaw, Griffin, Allen, Connell, Parrish, Moore, Knight, Giddens, and others. In that one visit, I found something that was more than maps or headstones or even names on microfilm. I found what I needed to do with the rest of my life. Over the next 10 years, I visited South Georgia and North Florida 2 or 3 times a year, a couple of weeks at a time. I became familiar with sand in my shoes, gnats in my ears, and the smell of musty record books in courthouse storerooms. I wore out 3 tape recorders, interviewing those octogenarians and nonagenarians who still remember those days and the people long gone. In 2002, I retired from one life and started a new life, finding Berrien. I started that search by purchasing my great-uncle Chester D. Shaw's home in Nashville, Georgia, a dilapidated old 1905 Queen-style Victorian home he built for his 3rd wife. He was a wealthy turpentine operator and county treasurer for one term, before he ate a meal of quail, swallowed a quail bone that lodged in his lower bowels, and he died a few days later from gangrene at the age of 37. I spent 3 years and half of my 401k in restoring the home from a condition of neglect back to its elegant origin. I completed that task in 2005 and found more of Berrien when I married my wife, Linda, in the front parlor of the home on its 100th anniversary. So finally, I was beginning to live Berrien. Then it was time to really start finding Berrien. In 2006, Berrien County was celebrating its sesquicentennial anniversary, 150 years after its creation in 1856. A small group of enthusiastic historians from the county decided we wanted to create a massive photo display of the county's history. We envisioned a 90-foot-long wall space that could be used to mount 11 4x8-foot panels with photos and historical milestones attached to the surfaces. We then went about asking residents of Berrien County to find photos from their family photo albums and shoeboxes. We set up shop in the Perry Memorial Library multi-purpose room with 2 or 3 scanners and laptop computers, plus a single Epson inkjet printer, and began scanning every photo that walked through the door. Any photo of a Berrien family, or Berrien location, or Berrien event, from any time period over 150 years. We scanned and identified each photo, then printed them out on crack and peel label sheets, then mounted them on black half-inch foam core board. In 3 months, we had scanned, printed, trimmed, and mounted over 600 photos of Berrien County history, families, and events. But the photos kept coming, and we had no more room to display them. So we created the Berrien County Historical Photo website, www.berriencounty.smugmug.com, and uploaded every photo that we had scanned. More families wanted to be included, and we kept adding photos. The estate administrators of 2 local photographers from the 1940s to the 1970s, Jamie Connell and Wink Rogers, donated all of their prints and negatives from their collection. And we're still adding photos to the site. We have now scanned and loaded over 14,000 photographs of Berrien County history and its families. The website is the largest historical photo website of any county on one site in the state of Georgia. Every photo is downloadable, free of charge for non-commercial use. Folks were calling and letting us know they had found their great-grandfather or their great-grandmother's photo on the website and had never seen their image before. We knew we were onto something. We were finding Berrien. In 2007, we had several members of the VFW contact the foundation about producing a photo display of military veterans from Berrien County. Once again, the residents responded overwhelmingly. We scanned and printed over 350 8x10 photographs of Berrien service members from every branch, listing their years of service and organization. We titled the display Heroes of Berrien and had a military artifact display in the library lobby. We used tent card panels on the tops of the library cabinets, completely filling the main library customer area. The display was up for 6 months, but we wanted to preserve the history that had been created and wanted to expand upon it. So we placed each photo in a scrapbook, along with a one-page biography on each person. The collection took up 9 volumes of space, and the books are expandable. We continue to include service members as they are provided by the families. We were finding our military Berrien. Among many of our first exhibit photos were school class photographs. We had the back side of the foam boards available, so we went about creating the next photo exhibit, Learning in Berrien, the history of education in Berrien County. We wanted to display every class photo of every school from the 1 and 2 room schoolhouses to the consolidated schools of today, and we came close to doing it. Through this effort, we were finding the educational history of Berrien. With the success of these 3 exhibits, in 2008, the Berrien County Board of Commissioners offered the foundation the use of the vacated old courthouse on the square. Soon, residents were looking for an appropriate place to preserve their family historical artifacts. Suddenly, we were becoming a museum and an archive. Each of these artifacts had a story to tell. Sometimes they were simple enough to be told in a paragraph. Others required a larger display area. Our display philosophy is that museum exhibits tell the story and the artifact is the illustration. In that respect, we are more than just an antique shop. We don't accept donations or artifacts if its story isn't known or cannot be told. Occasionally, an unusual artifact is donated that certainly requires an explanation. This cast iron commode was retrieved from the Atlantic Coastline Railroad passenger train that derailed at the Alapaha River Trestle near Alapaha in 1911. We may be the only museum that features a commode in one of their displays. As we discovered each story, we incorporated them into our monthly discussions, which consisted mainly of a 30 or 40-minute video PowerPoint on each theme. Our mission became helping the community find its own history, finding Berrien. Often the story came before we could document it, so we spent time researching newspaper files, family journals, and getting oral histories. One of the earliest stories we documented was of the Gator children of Berrien County, 2 children of the Jack and Mary Cook family that were traveling sideshow attractions at the turn of the century. One of our foundation members donated an 1883 volume of the Smithsonian Annual Report that details an article on the Indian mounds of Berrien County. Few of the members or county residents knew of the mounds, where they were, and why they were built where they were. 3 members brought vintage photos, advertisements, and newspaper articles about excursion resorts, each from a different location in the county. Soon we were scanning old newspapers and learning of the Mayhaw Lake, Dixie Lake, and Lucy Lake resorts, all excursion destinations in the early 1910 era. Most pieces of history came to us one artifact at a time, but in 2010 we received a treasure trove of history when Patricia Miller brought us the contents of her great-grandfather Hardeman Sermon's storage chest from the attic of his home just north of Ray City. Therein it contained family photos, his personal wallet filled with Confederate banknotes, and property ownership documents. Among those documents was the bill of sale of two slave boys, ages 11 and 13, in 1856. I have provided you with the story of Dick McGowan's slave boy that details what information this single artifact meant to the foundation and the descendants of Dick McGowan as they found Berrien as part of their own history. It was also the subject of one of our largest gatherings for a foundation discussion video. Family history also provides a window for finding Berrien. Another popular, well-attended program was titled Doc Holliday and the Berrien Hidalgos. It traced the origins of the Berrien Hidalgo family as the adopted brother of Doc Holliday, brought home from the Mexican-American War by Doc Holliday's father. Those descendants still make Berrien County their home. Our recent emphasis in finding Berrien is discovering, documenting, and sharing the stories of the ghost towns of Berrien. These programs feature the story of the many small communities around the county that were once thriving villages, but for one reason or another, they have nearly disappeared altogether. The purpose of the foundation is to not only find and preserve the history of Berrien County, but to share and help inform the residents and visitors of its history. Two Smithsonian Institution traveling exhibits were awarded to Berrien County. These awarded exhibits are only available to communities of less than 20,000, and each community is required to provide their own exhibit on the theme based on the Smithsonian exhibit. In 2013, we found the history of roots music in Berrien County and what that culture meant to Berrien history. Then in 2016, the Smithsonian Main Street exhibit was America's Hometown Teams. This exhibit was matched and exceeded by the Berrien Our Hometown Teams exhibit. It was our largest and most well-attended of the two exhibits. According to the Smithsonian Main Street program directors, the Berrien display was the best exhibit of any local exhibit they had seen on the East Coast. Their quote was, "This is the best little museum in Georgia." We hear that comment quite often from folks traveling through Berrien County from faraway places. This is the best little museum we have ever seen in a community this size. So now we have started marketing the museum and archive as the best little museum in Georgia. Our permanent exhibits in the museum are the Story of America's First Doughboy exhibit in the Military Honors Room, featuring the first Spirit of the American Doughboy created in the United States. The exhibit also details the worst World War I maritime disaster that took the lives of 25 Berrien County soldiers and honors the service of every Berrien County soldier, sailor, or Marine that has served since the Civil War. Our Old Coffee Road exhibit features the route of the historic road through Nashville, heart of the Coffee Road. We also offer self-guided tours of the route with detailed maps and commentary. Our turpentining exhibit displays tools of the turpentiner and explains the importance of the naval stores industry in Berrien County in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. In the center hallway, we detail the history of the courthouse clock and its original clockwork functions. We also display the 1870 Berrien County Weights and Measures chest, one of the few chests still in a historical collection of any county in the state of Georgia. We also honor the farm families who have certified their farm as a Centennial Farm. Berrien County has more Centennial Farms certified than any other county in the state. Our 4 90-foot pictorial panel exhibits are rotated every year or so, but by far the most popular panels are the original historical timeline exhibit. Though we of the Berrien Historical Foundation have accomplished much in the past 15 years, we are still collecting photos, artifacts, and family histories. We keep our doors open from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays and hope someone will walk through our door, share another story of their family lore, and we can continue finding Berrien.